I'm Louise Boyle, the Senior Climate Correspondent at The Independent, and we asked you to send your questions on the biggest challenges in the climate crisis this year in 2023. Let's have a look at what you asked. DS Cunning 27 asks, does any of the flooding help relieve the drought California has been facing, or is the flooding too much, too fast? So quite a lot of people had questions about the recent flooding in California. It's been caused by atmospheric rivers. These are these huge plumes of moisture that come in from the Pacific and have completely drenched the state from the very north to the south. We've seen more than 900 reports of mudslides, flash flooding and other floods in the area, and some areas have got more than 400% of their annual rainfall. And there's also been really heavy snow in the Sierra Nevada. It has been absolutely devastating. There's been at least 18 deaths reported and dozens of neighbourhoods are completely underwater. But we also know that California has been in extreme drought for the past 2 decades. So does it stand to reason that all this water will go some way to fixing what's known as the mega drought? Well, it doesn't seem likely in the long term. Rain has helped fill some of the state's reservoirs, and hopefully it will help bring some relief to farmers and Californians who've been under increasingly strict water restrictions. But temperatures have been heating up earlier in the year, and so even if there is a large snowpack now, it may have melted away by the time spring comes around. So despite the massive downpours, it's still unlikely to raise the water levels above critical in the biggest reservoirs. Punchniff asks, is a Lula presidency better for the Amazon rainforest, or is it just all BS? Can we actually do anything for the Amazon, or is it already Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, universally known as Lula, was inaugurated as Brazil's president on New Year's Day. In one of his first messages as president, an office which he has been returned to by the Brazilian people, he spoke of how he intended to reverse and then eventually end deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. The rainforest has been in dire straits for a number of years after the former president, Jair Bolsonaro, stripped back environmental protections and enabled industries to push into the rainforest. It's led to a 60% surge in deforestation compared to the previous 4 years. The complex ecosystem of the Amazon is one of the world's most valuable carbon sinks, soaking up the carbon emissions that are heating the planet. But as the dense rainforest has been cut down for illegal mining, logging and ranching, it has changed into grasslands. And scientists have warned that the Amazon is approaching a tipping point where it will become a carbon emitter. So time really is of the essence, but there have been some promising signs. Shortly after his election victory, Lula appeared at COP27 in Egypt, where he reinforced to the world that Brazil was back in the fight to save the Amazon. He's done a couple of things since then. He has restarted a fund for sustainable development in the rainforest, and he's also put some key players in place in his cabinet, sort of A-team, to help reverse the damage that has been done there. Ra World Address asks, spotted an article that said the ozone layer is healing. Has the climate crisis been averted? This is a really great question, but unfortunately not. It is true that the ozone layer is healing, and according to a new UN assessment, it is likely to fully mend in about 40 years' time. This is due to an agreement that was signed 30 years ago by all countries for chemicals known as CFCs that were used in aerosols and refrigerators, things like that had been eating away at the ozone layer. These chemicals did a huge amount of damage. They allowed harmful radiation to seep in, and it was linked to skin cancer and lots of damage to agriculture. The healing of the ozone layer has really been one of the biggest environmental success stories. However, the role that the hole in the ozone layer has played in the climate crisis is relatively small compared to the impacts from human activities, largely the burning of fossil fuels. But the dramatic reversal that was made in the ozone layer by all countries coming together, some say is a good indicator that a similar thing can be done when it comes to cutting fossil fuels. Okay, next question. Le Bout Monon asks, is nuclear power a good solution for climate change? This is one of the most divisive topics at the centre of transitioning away from fossil fuels, and the arguments fall roughly into 2 broad camps. And on one side you have the never nuclear people. It's easy to see some of their arguments. There have been massive consequences to nuclear power. Then there's the fact that nuclear energy produces radioactive waste, which sticks around for thousands of years. It's also expensive. It takes a lot of time to get it up and running compared to other sources of clean energy. Many people would also argue that it increases the threat of nuclear weapons proliferation around the world. Those in favour of nuclear power would say that it does not cause direct carbon emissions. Then again, it's not exactly emissions-free either. There's lots of carbon-intensive processes associated with it. For example, the uranium mining that's needed, the emissions that come from constructing these huge facilities, and the water vapour and heat that they release. Also, there's the fact that because they take so long to come online, compared to, say, wind or solar power, it means that the grid remains running on fossil fuels for longer. Another argument in favour of nuclear is the land use argument, and that is that it takes much less land to produce more electricity than any other emissions-free source. But a number of high-profile investors have become convinced that nuclear is necessary for the energy transition, and new modular reactors, promising to be safer and more efficient, are due to come online later this decade. Thank you so much for all your questions, and keep up to date on the latest climate news on The Independent and Independent TV on our website and social media. We'll see you again on You Ask the Questions.